So I was talking about leads I like. I wanted to finish up. I thought I would do it all in one video, but I got to 10 minutes, so I decided to stop it. So as far as other leads, one time there was a guy who there was a young man who he ended up committing suicide while in jail. And in prison, I'm sorry, not jail. Jail is actually where you go if you're in a county or a local lockup. Prison is where you get sent off to a facility that's run by the state, and usually are for long-term inmates. So this guy, the father, his son committed suicide about 3 months before he was, or 2 months before he was to be released after serving 5 or 6 years in prison, and he committed suicide on December 26th, like early in the morning, like 5 a.m. on December 26th. And so I wrote, Kevin Test still doesn't have the answers to his questions about his son's apparent suicide during the pre-dawn hours on the day after Christmas. So I like that, during the pre-dawn hours on the day after Christmas really gets this idea of this darkness, this pre-dawn after Christmas. It really kind of sets a mood. And then I went on to say, I talked about what I just told you, and then I got to my nut graph and said, I then got into about prison suicide, and I did a whole story on prison suicide. And so because it was farther into the news cycle, this had happened on December 26th. This was published on January 3rd. The story was about dealing with prison suicide, and I started off with this anecdotal lead, and that was the first sentence where it's like, Kevin Test still doesn't have the answers to his question about his son's apparent suicide during the pre-dawn hours on the day after Christmas. And I think it sets a good mood. Or not a good mood, a dark mood, but it sets a mood that at least keeps you interested. I'm sorry, I don't know why I said good mood. Anyway, another one. Last week, 16,000 ducks flew into Peoria to hit the Illinois River, a place they haven't swum in 10 years. A little bit of a blind lead. 16,000 ducks flew into Peoria. What? Well, it was about one of those duck derbies where they dump all the rubber ducks in and then you pay for one, and if your number crosses the finish line first, you win money. They rent these ducks, and so I went out to talk to them, and they had flown these ducks in. They use these ducks all over the country, and companies will basically ship them. And so, like, if you're doing a fundraiser in Peoria, they ship you 16,000 ducks. When you're done, you box them all up, and they ship them on to Bismarck, Idaho, or some Bismarck, Montana, Butte, Iowa, Idaho, somewhere else, right? And so these ducks had all just flown in from all these other locations, Seattle, New York, whatever, and they had come in from a couple different spots. And so it's like last week, 16,000 ducks flew into Peoria. They actually did literally fly into it to hit the Illinois River, a place they haven't swum in 10 years. And they were going to swim, I'd say. So there's a little bit of playing with the language, a little bit of a blind lead. And I always just liked it. I thought it's kind of one of those, like, you're like, what? Kind of just a funny lead. It's a fun story, so you can have a little fun with it. Nothing wrong with that. Then I have one about a home show at the Civic Center. It said the Civic Center rolled out the carpet as well as the linoleum, tile, and hardwood flooring this weekend. Okay, it kind of sets the scene, right? Has a little fun with rolling out the carpet and sets the scene of all the stuff they got there. And then the last one I had on my list was visitors to the Glen Oak Zoo were guests Saturday for a boa constrictor's dinner, a meal that's served only every 10 days. And it was about going, I don't even remember doing this in all honesty. I really don't. It's one of these, I'm like, I don't even remember this story at all. But visitors to Glen Oak Zoo were guests Saturday for a boa constrictor's dinner, a meal that's served only every 10 days. So basically, the event was about St. Patrick's Day, and they were having snake things because St. Patrick is known for having driven the snakes out of Ireland, is what he's one of the things he's known as the patron saint of Ireland over. And so this was sort of looking at one of the snakes, and it was just a fun lead. It was telling a story about one. Yeah, I don't know that these are the greatest leads or anything, but they're just ones I liked. And, they each have a story. They each tell a story. They each are hopefully grabbing your attention. Visitors to Glen Oak Zoo were guests Saturday for a boa constrictor's dinner, a meal that's served only every 10 days. I then talk about how, they don't eat that much and what happened at the event. But I think that's one of those that if you read that, you'd be like, Only every 10 days. That's interesting. Maybe I want to learn about that. And then hopefully you read a couple more paragraphs and I've hooked you into the next, hooked you into the next, hooked you into the next. And by the time you're done, you've read my whole article. And that was my goal in the first place, because I wanted you to read my article, because I wanted you to know just how brilliant I am, just as all of you do too. Okay. Did I do that with a straight face? Anyway, hope all of you are doing well. I will give you some handouts. Talk to you soon if I haven't already talked to you and talked about these videos, but hope all is well.